just once again, we want to just say thank you so much for having us. My name is JoJo. This is Sarah, and this is Iruz. And this next song is called
No.
Hell no.
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
The women before us tell a story about the woman's first no. It grew like fruit from the palm trees.
They sat around until it fell.
Staring at this beautiful thing. They'd never seen something like it. They all took turns tasting,
Swirling it round with their tongues. No. No. The no was ripe and juicy. Its succulent flavor was divine. The flavor lingered round their breath, and each bite like a fire. The women knew to plant the seed for generations that would come. Nothing could taste better than no, as far as they were concerned. No. No, that no couldn't be sweeter until they discovered hell. No.
Thank you.
I love you for your brownness and the rounded darkness of your breast. I love you for the breaking sadness in your voice and shadows where your wayward eyelids rest. Something of old forgotten queens lurks in the lithe abandon of your walk, and something of the shackled slave sobs in the rhythm of your talk. In the rhythm of your talk. Oh, 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 little brown girl. Oh, little brown girl. Oh, little brown girl. Born for sorrow's mate. Keep all you have of queenliness. Forget
getting you once were called slave. Let your full lips laugh and fade at fate.
Right. Can we give it up once again for the San Francisco Bay Area Theater Company? Thank you. I think I'm just going to be saying hell no to everything now, right? I think a lot of women feel the same way a lot of the times. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Yelena Nimoy. I'm a senior program manager with the Forum Fam. It is so great to see all of you here. We made it. There's so many of you I've never even met in person before, and I just love this opportunity to put names and faces and Zoom faces to real faces. And it's been 2.5 years in the making, and so before we move to this rich conversation we're about to have today, I just wanted to say a few words because the themes of this plenary resonate really deeply with me, and they're grounded in my own experience. So I was a first-generation college student, and I'm the first in my family to complete any college degree. I'm also an immigrant, and my grandfather, Oleg, I might cry because it's okay, he passed and his anniversary is coming up, but he was a really formative influence in my life, and he was really the one who taught me to love education. And he's the ancestor that Monique said, think about your ancestor. He is that ancestor for me. He only had about a 7th grade education. He was born in 1917, right before the revolution in Russia, part of many wars, and he never completed anything about a 7th grade level. But he took me to the library every week. And he instilled this love of education and learning with me. And I knew that, my mom, his daughter, she didn't finish college, but I knew I had to do it. And so when I came to Brooklyn, New York, when I was 16, my parents at the time were actually younger than I am today, which is such a funny thing to think about. They didn't speak much English. They were very new immigrants. They didn't go to college anywhere, let alone in this country. And so they just couldn't guide me in making those educational decisions. And my high school in Brooklyn was a public high school, very under-resourced. We didn't have really good college advising. So I really didn't have those trusted adults that I knew were in my corner that we know is so important, that could actually walk you through, right? My parents supported me, but they couldn't say, here's this decision. Here's how you walk through an educational pathway. Maybe you're making a mistake. And so for really a longest time, I felt that, maybe I don't really belong in college. Maybe I am making mistakes. Do I have my educational pathways, laid out for me? I really didn't feel like I belonged in post-secondary. And so what I really, love about the plenary that we're about to hear, and what really strikes me, Dr. Russell Lowery-Hart from Amarillo College and Dr. Pam Eddinger from Bunker Hill Community College in Boston, and Dr. Elizabeth Gonzalez, who is going to moderate this, is the deep love and care for those of you who caught our previous virtual sessions with them, the deep love and care they have for their students. And they have this authentic commitment to supporting students who might feel marginalized or come from marginalized communities, or might feel, they might feel maybe I don't belong here, maybe I'm a non-traditional student, right? That's a word, non-traditional. Those students so often have experiences that tell them that they don't belong in post-secondary education. And so I just want to thank this panel and Dr. Pam, Dr. Russell, for having this commitment to students. We talked a lot about belonging here, and so just thank you from the bottom of my heart for making this commitment, for making students feel like they belong and that they can succeed. And I turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Yelena. Buenas tardes. I think I can say that. It's time now to say buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Elizabeth Gonzalez. I want to draw a through line in the spirit of, I think some of us just heard some tough news over the news and over whether it was through your phone or from friends, and another episode of violence. And I want to acknowledge that. I want us to take a second. And I also want to say that I hope that the beautiful music we heard has filled your soul. I'm using it to fill my soul, to be present with you in this moment, the beautiful story that Yelena shared. So I just want to acknowledge that we just heard some tough news. And so just want to take 5 seconds just to breathe together on that. So let's be present together. And I want to also, we're in a wonderful session around walking the walk, operationalizing equity in post-secondary education. And I just want to say a word that what we hope is you hear a story about impact, institutional leaders who are really doing that work, some reflections on COVID-19, racial reckoning, what have we learned about what it takes to actually continue to serve our students. Also learned something about building a culture of care, a culture of love, a culture of equity. That is a new thing in higher education. I don't think we talk about that often. So we'll share that, and we'll also share a vision for the future, thinking about all of those lessons and reflecting on that, and that aim toward a culture of equity, care, and love. What does the future look like, and how do we get there together? We're not going to get there alone. And so that's our session. We're going to have a conversation, going to have some table talk, and then we'll end it with Q&A, hearing from you, and then wrap that up. And I think this conversation is really critical at this moment, because and you've heard this all day in really profound ways. Our democracy is at stake. Education has a role in that. Our ideas around social and economic mobility, the story of Yelena. I come here present as a first-generation Chicana, daughter of immigrants, daughter of a garment worker from East LA, first-generation college student, first to go away. So all the things that we think about education, all the benefits that it's supposed to give us, that's true. I'm a product of that. Yelena's a product of that. But I also think that that's in spite of. I hope that in our conversation today, we start to talk about because of. What should education do because of? We're going to be successful because higher education did some things differently. So with that, I want to welcome Pam and Russell to join me on stage in this conversation.
Yeah, we've got to dance.
And they've known each other a long time, so this is going to be great.
You send them in.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to have two incredible leaders who've truly walked the walk. And so let's start off with Russell. Share your story. Share the story of Amarillo College, what you've done, the impact that you've had on the students. That's why you're here. So why don't you kick us off?
Well, I'm so honored to share this space with you all. Today has been an incredible day that's not only fed my soul, but challenged it. And it started when Monique started the day by asking us to identify the person, the root. And I want to acknowledge that for me, sitting in this space, my person was always my family until I became the president of Amarillo College. And I want to introduce you to my person. Many of you have heard me talk about her. She is Maria. She is the typical student in Amarillo College. I have 10,000 students. I live in the most conservative congressional district in the country. I live in a community where 10% of my neighbors are refugees, and the majority of my college students reflect my community, and they're students of color. But our typical student at Amarillo College is Maria. She's a first-generation Hispanic female raising 1.2 kids while she works 2 part-time jobs, living in the war zone of poverty, and feeling the burden of not just her future, the future of her kids, but the future of her extended family and neighborhood. She is my person. And when I became president of Amarillo College, I looked at our success rates and they were abysmal. They weren't what my community needed. They weren't honoring of our students. And so I did what I heard Kimberly and Starsky talk about this morning. I listened to Maria. Our data told us who our typical student was. She wasn't the student that we were set up for. She wasn't the student that is mediated or talked about or written about or researched about. But she was our typical student in Amarillo College. And I'm guessing she's the typical student in most of higher education. So when I realized that we were set up for the wrong student, I actually listened to our students. I used secret shoppers and focus groups to have Maria tell me what the perfect college looked and felt like for her. And as a result of those conversations, Maria wrote the values for the college, which are non-traditional. They're not values that you see in higher education. She didn't say the perfect college gave her an understanding of global education or problem solving or critical thinking skills, which are important purposes of higher education. The perfect college for her was really about relationships and about service. And so the values reflect relationship and service. When I listened to Maria tell me what the perfect college looked like and felt like for her, I kept hearing words like caring and help and love center in the conversations that she was sharing with me. And as a result, we have, as a college, committed to loving Maria to success. We're going to love the students we have, not the students we used to have, or the students that we wished we had, or what I think is its own horror story in higher education, where we love the students that we were when we were in college. And which is why there's such a disconnect between the students that we serve and the people that are working in higher education. We have to pivot to understanding Maria. So Maria helped us identify values that we've written into job descriptions and evaluations and hiring process, and she helped us define a theory of change that's fundamentally closed equity gaps in Amarillo College. And this is what she told us. If we can remove life barriers in an accelerated learning environment and a culture of caring where Maria feels seen, heard, and loved, then she'll get a credential, she'll finish, she'll complete. And as a result, as measured by Texas, our completion rates have gone from 19% to 60%, and we've closed equity gaps by centering Maria's voice in our reformation. We can't play at the margins of it. We've heard conversations all day. I was in a panel with Del Norte, talked about community organizing and the inside and outside, but centered love in that conversation. And then we heard from Angela and Fred that our hierarchies have to reflect the voices that we're listening to, that Starsky and Kimberly challenged us to. I feel like my own leadership journey and the story of Amarillo College is both challenged by the conversation we've had today and affirmed by it, because we have rooted what Maria needs and who we have become. And removing a life barrier means that we have social workers. It means that we're connecting all of the social services that she needs to deal with the basic life barriers that she brings with her. she can't take 5, 6, 7 years to get a degree. We've had to accelerate her learning into 8-week classes, into killing developmental education, and we've had to empower every single person that works at Amarillo College to love on Maria. So if you were to walk on our campus today and you saw a student that was looking at a map or not sure where they were going, an employee is empowered to introduce themselves, understand what she's needing, and not just walk her there, but advocate for her once she gets there.
Wow. Absolutely. Lots in there. I'm going to pull on it a little later, but I want to turn it over to Pam to share, what.
I'm not following him.
You know how to do this.
I'm not going to do it.
Tell
Hell
your
no.
story. Tell your story.
Oh,
Pam.
no.
It touches my heart so much to hear
great.
you tell about Maria. Because Maria can be 2/3 of my student body. Because I don't think our students are necessarily that different in their experiences being first generation, having gone through traumatic situations in their lives. We have about 16,000 students. 3/4 are adults, not traditional age. I no longer call them non-traditional, I call them post-traditional, because language matters. And the average age is 27. I think all of your institutions probably are averaging around that. 3 out of 4 work, many full-time, many 2 jobs. 3 out of 5 are parents. Half of those parents are single moms. So when I hear my 4-year colleagues sometimes talk about these students, I'm like, well, which one? I've got one of 8. Pick one and then tell me what you think about my students. And in some ways, the kind of programming that we've developed has followed that model of knowing your students, right? We did a lot of internal professional development work with our faculty and our staff. We read everyone we can, right? The Sharon Harpers and the Ibram Kendis and the Tara Yassos about cultural wealth and Estelle Ben-Simon about really digging deep into understanding where your students are from. And what's really interesting in that journey is that we ended up developing very strong affinity programs. And they are race ethnicity affinity, and we're really hoping that we move much farther in gender affinity. And I feel like when I come on campus sometimes, they're just small pots boiling everywhere, and every pot has this beautiful fragrance and mix of ingredients. Yet when they come together, the intentions are the same. It's serving Maria.
Yeah.
It's serving Maria. So let me give you an example of this one program. Where are my Boston people? Whoa, that group over there. Okay. So the most recent program we developed is called HOPE. Halting Oppressive Pathways Through Education. And it's focused on Black and brown men on our campus. And it's peer mentoring as well as advising, professional advising. And Evans, where are you? Stand up. This is the man. This is the man who gets me to know my students. So what we've done is that we've looked at data in the same way that a lot of you do. And we found that consistently our Black and brown men have this huge gap. And we know why. Because our system is built for, how did I put this the other day? Harvard was built for the second sons of landowners so they can be priests. We haven't changed it. We're still built for those second sons of homeowners who wants to be priests or maybe now engineers. So it is not that our students are broken or behind or any of those. There are nothing wrong with our students. Our systems are not built for it. There's nothing wrong with Maria.
She's great.
Who's a beautiful woman raising children. It is the system that we have that they cannot navigate. So my dean said to me, Dean Nuri Chandler Smith said to me, well, while we're trying to fix the system, we've got to help these folks navigate. We can't leave generations behind just because you want to fix the system. a lot of us want that transformation, and I think sometimes that idea of transformation, of fixing everything all at once, is an egotistical pipe dream. Because the world doesn't work like that. You gotta fix the system while you navigate, or else you're gonna leave generations behind. And that's what we did with Hope, I think. So we hired a bunch of really good people and say, here's some money, you go. And that's what Evan did. He took some money and he went. We don't interfere because he knows better than I do. And our students tell him what we need. Sometimes the best thing we can do is to get the hell out of the way.
That's so true.
And a lot of times we don't, because we have this built-in, and this is a lot of learning for me over the last 4 or 5 years. I have unlearned so many things that I have absorbed while I was going through undergrad at Barnard and graduate school at Columbia. I love Barnard and Columbia, but it serves 3% of our population. It taught me nothing that I needed to know to help our community college students. Other than the fact that meritocracy shouldn't be, because meritocracy is not really a good measure of Maria or anybody else around us. So I want the group to stand up, our students to stand up. Stand up. That's the hope of our future, and if we're going to have any transformation at all, it's on your shoulders.
No pressure.
No pressure
Nope.
at all.
So when I told you that I've unlearned a lot of things, I'm a first-generation student. I came to the States when I was 11. My parents were middle-class folks in Hong Kong. My dad was in trade, and my mom was a homemaker. I have a brother and a sister. They gave up everything they had in Hong Kong to come to the United States. My dad was a waiter in a Chinese restaurant all his life. My mom was a garment worker, except she took the clothing home to sew, so when the kids come home, we would have somebody at home. It was 6 cents per collar. 6 cents. And when we came home from school, when we have time, we helped her turn those collars because you sewed them inside out, right? And then you turn the points and you have to tease out the points. And that sound of the sewing machine at home, where she goes, zzz, zzz, that was the soundtrack of my life. And it's those collars at 6 cents a piece that put my brother and sister through college. Elizabeth knows it because she has.
My dad did the pleats. We were joking we can make a dress. My dad,
Yeah,
exactly.
right?
My dad was a pleat maker.
So I think some generations give and some generations receive. I was lucky enough to receive. And frankly, I don't think the world is thinking in that immigrant framework where you really grow your children and you grow your society. You don't only grow 3% of your children. Right? That's not the way that the world is supposed to work. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and I think what grounds me is are my parents and the values of work that they represent. And the fact that my mom, when she passed away at 73, never fully learned English because she did not discover community college, even though we were literally 5 miles from Miami-Dade. But those weren't the days when it was okay for adults to go to college. And so, you know, I think in some ways I'm making it up to her. For every Maria,
Pam.
right? For every Maria that we have in our midst, we owe them to develop their potential and to support them on the way up. So, yeah, I unlearned a whole lot of stuff. I can't believe I paid all that money, too, to learn all the things that I'm going to unlearn. But hopefully there's no one here from Barnard or Columbia. So, anyways.
No, thank you. That's, exactly, yes, thank you. You know, one of the threads I want to pull, because both of you talked about this, is this notion of a culture of care. And you heard me say this at the beginning. It's not a thing that higher education, I've never heard it said that I was going to a place that was going to create a culture of love, a culture of care. It's like, what classes do I take? It's navigating on my own. we could start with you, Russell. Like, what is that? What did that require? You spoke to it a little bit, but what I'm curious about is what was the reaction to that, to start using those words?
Well, it was universally received from the very beginning. That's sarcasm. You know, it's unusual for us to use the words love, caring, helping even in higher education because our bureaucracies are designed to make our jobs easier, not make the process of loving someone to success more effective. And so when you challenge bureaucracy or you bring change or you talk about, you know, you've got to change the system while you're helping them navigate the system, there's immediate resistance because it means my job's going to shift. And so it wasn't enough that for me to root the college in understanding Maria, just from my perspective. I had to have my colleagues at Amarillo College hear from and fall in love with Maria the same way that I had. And Maria defined caring for us. She defined caring in the values that are now the centerpiece of everything that we do. And the number one job description for every single employee at Amarillo College is to help Maria. And then your job duties. Maria is your first job duty. Wow. So when we first started talking about caring and love and helping, I had people that were the front line of serving Maria say, well, my supervisor gets mad if I walk Maria to here. Maria is your job. The computer is secondary to what your job is. So Maria defined caring 5 ways. 1, she defined it as wow. We care for her if at the end of any interaction with an AC employee, she goes, wow, they really were helpful. She defined caring as innovating the bureaucracies, making them, flattening them, simplifying them, getting rid of them. She defined caring as fun, making college fun, because Maria brings so much fear into the space that Pam and I occupy. She defined caring as familial, not in the sense of being a part of the AC family, but that we would embrace and love her family, her children, her extended family, her parents, her chosen family, and invite them into the process so that they were partners with us in Maria's learning. And she defined, despite what the song said, hell no, she defined caring as yes. I was so challenged in our secret shoppers and focus groups by how Maria's life was defined by no. Yeah. No at school, no at work, no at home, no at church, no. Yeah. And the perfect college for her would just would empower people to help her get to a yes. And that's how she defined caring. And so every employee at AC is evaluated by those 5 behaviors.
That's amazing. Same for you, Pam.
I always remember this one story, and it's not different in my place, Russell. So I was new to Bunker Hill at that point, and I was chatting with someone who was serving on the front line, an administrative assistant, and we were talking about financial aid. And she looked at me and she said, well, there are some folks who only come to school because they get financial aid. They came for the money. And it's really, and it's really, really not okay for them to get extra because they may give it to somebody else or buy food for their children. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
It is incredible the presumption that people have about what higher education is. Because all of our ideals are defined by the IV pluses. We still look at SAT scores, whether you get into your dream college or not. Everything that we've done in our vocabulary on campus, it's around a false sense of what is meritorious. Mm-hmm. Right? So for a while there, I hope there's nobody here from Complete College America either, because the earlier iterations of that was 15 to finish. And I'm looking at this thing going, people can't do math over there. Because if you're working 30 hours a week and you get your Carnegie units right, how do you squeeze 15 credits into a semester? And it's like, these are the people who are supposed to be doing this reform work with us, right? Yet they say 15 to finish. Now, they don't say that anymore. They really are very good now. But when you look at the kind of systemic prejudices that are embedded in there, it is not far from there to the idea that our systems are built under white supremacy. Right, under social, not just white, but social supremacy, economic supremacy, any kind of supremacy, because if you don't make it to that tip top, if you're not that one person on top, that somehow you're not as smart. I really believe that Heather McGhee is right, that my gain is not your loss, that we do have solidarity dividend that we can give for one another. So folks who don't want students to come because they begrudge them $500 or $1,000 for food or for whatever it is that they need, they are filling swimming pools with concrete. That's what they're doing. So, you know, it took, I think, probably 3, 4, maybe more years for that kind of conversations to really turn around, because it takes a college president, it takes a vice president, it takes a director to say, it is okay that you're spending $300 to take a group of students to dinner. It is okay to do that because they find solidarity, they find community, and food is community. It is okay to feed your students. It is a sin, I think, to even have to ask. How many people over at Harvard actually ask, is it okay to take a group of 15 students to dinner? Do you think they actually ask? Yet we ask because we're so conditioned to believe that our students have to work twice as hard in order to get to that place. And there's a Japanese word for it. It's called kuroshi, to work to death. And I think we work our students to death. We work our students to death because we really do believe somewhere in our heart that only by almost dying do you achieve grit. I am banning that word from my vocabulary.
I hate grit.
I am banning that word from my
Please
vocabulary.
remove that. It's awful.
It is awful. Our students should not have to be so extraordinary to trade their lives in for education. It just shouldn't. I'm sorry, now I'm like, I gotta get off the soapbox.
I want to join your.
They love it. Like,
I want to join your soapbox,
please.
though, because I remember when we were first talking about, and Maria came and to our General Assembly and Data Summit, and she's, you know, I had 7 Marias on the stage talking about their experiences, and then I used, and we were going through poverty training as a college to understand our own stereotypes and misconceptions of it. And one of our financial aid officers raised her hand and said what you just articulated, like, but they're going to use for a phone, and the facilitator just asked, why are you so afraid that someone with nothing is going to get something?
Yes, my God.
Are you as equally afraid if someone with something is going to get more? And it just exposed the stereotype and the action behind the stereotype, that if you're of means, we don't question the scholarship that you get and what you're going to do with it. But if you've grown up in the war zone of poverty, we question every dime that you're given. And it's awful.
how did you undo that then? Because that's, to me, that's about the beginning of a culture of love, a culture of respect. How did you undo, like, what did you have to do,
So
literally?
you challenge, well, first of all, training, professional
You say
development.
yes. You say yes all the time.
Yes.
You just say yes. If Evan needs $10,000, you say yes. That's what changes it. It's money.
It is.
It's about money.
So Pam, and we talked about this.
You don't have $10,000, by the way. You have more than $10,000.
She just said yes. She just said yes.
And he just wrote it down. But we talked about this before, when we were getting ready for this. We always say, like, we actually know what works.
Yes.
What gets in the way of that then? And how do we turn it around? 'Cause
I'm
you just
going to say this, and folks in the audience are going to hate me.
No one can hate you, Pam.
Oh, yeah, they do.
No.
So I really do believe that those who are in philanthropy believes that we have to prove everything 15 times. And the work is not improving it. I've got multiple programs on campus that work. Hope has a 15% retention gain. Okay? 2 other programs that we've run have all these retention gains. Yet, where there's no money is for expansion. Right? We don't need to have financial literacy taught to our students. They can calculate down to the 50 cents that they need for a book. They need, as you said, Russell, they need to build wealth. Right? So it's the same thing about scaling up what works. Don't make me, get $250,000 to do yet another pilot. We know what works. We know coaching works. We know, tutoring in classes work. We know all of these things. Give me the $250,000 so I can give my students $7,000 more a year so they don't have to work an extra 15 hours a week. That's what works. So the other thing is that I think when philanthropy is vibrant and big and giving away a lot of money, it is a failure of public policy.
Yeah.
If your state government or your federal government is not supporting what I believe is the talent development of their citizens and their residents, and philanthropy is doing that work in place of your public funds, then somebody is not doing something. Somebody is funding the education for the family that you should be supporting. I mean, using that analogy, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if we need more money. I think different kinds of money.
This is why every time I'm with Pam, at the end of it, I go, when can I vote for you for president?
Stop.
Please. I'm being serious. Like, we don't need politicians. We need Pam. We need people who are rooted in the work and understand it, and understand the people that we're trying to serve and help. And the key to what you just said is scale, except it's not scalable sometimes with $250,000. It may be $2.5 million. But we know what works.
Yes,
we know
what works.
Social workers, you want to solve most of the problems in the world, hire more social workers.
Yep, and tutors.
Tutoring, we know. Coaching,
Yep.
no, we know. Those are the engaged pedagogy.
Yeah.
Just help us scale those things, and we'll transform higher education.
Yeah, our students don't drop out of algebra because they can't do math.
No.
They drop out of algebra because they have to work, they have children, somebody gets sick, a tire gets popped.
We did Trellis has a financial health survey that we give in Texas, and what it told us about Maria is that she's an $83 emergency away from dropping out. So if
right.
she gets a busted tire, as you just referenced, if she has a sick kid and misses a shift at work, the issue isn't that Maria's not smart enough to go to college, is that she is balancing life challenges that make college the fifth or sixth priority, not the first.
Right.
But our systems are built as if you have no life barriers that get in the way of making college your first priority.
Right.
And we have to change the systems to honor who Maria is and what she's dealing with. But she doesn't need financial literacy.
She knows how to count money.
She knows how to make $1 spend like $5.
Every
She doesn't
time.
need to learn how to balance a checkbook. She knows how to balance money. She just doesn't have enough of it to live.
You know, it's really difficult to explain to someone, sometimes up in Beacon Hill, where our legislature is, that higher education for community college students, a lot of us, is a luxury good. It's the first thing to go.
Yeah.
Right? Because at the center of their lives is their family, their livelihood, their children, their rent, their work, whatever that is. It is not higher education. We have not accorded enough privilege to our students so that they can make education a regular part of their lives.
Yeah. So, Pam and Russell, because I want a chance to, engage the community here, but you've got this network, you've got these different voices. What does it take to move beyond? Because we can't just rely on higher education. You guys have given examples of like it moves slow, it takes a lot of work, but what's the movement? What do you think it requires for us to elevate all the issues that you've talked about? Creating more culture of care. Let's, it's not about financial literacy, it's about, elevating the student experience and designing for the student. What's required? Higher ed doesn't think like this, but you got me all fired up. So like, what's the movement around this?
So for folks who are practitioners in the field, which you all are, right, or students, you got to carry a narrative that you can tell in an elevator speech. And this is really important because you don't know who you're going to run into. So that tomorrow you run into Governor Baker, well, Governor Baker's not a good one since he's coming out of office. There's someone who holds your state budget, and you happen to walk into an elevator with him or her or them. You have to be able to tell the story. So I've gotten it down to like 4 minutes. Right, and you probably haven't.
I'm not that good yet, Pam.
No, Maria's pretty good. You can do Maria in 3 minutes. Is that we do not yet have a common narrative at the community colleges, because I still hear community college presidents or trustees saying, we don't have a hunger problem, our students are better than that. I'm like, that's bullshit. You show me a community college where there's no hunger problem, then you're not looking hard enough, right? All of you know this. Yet, we have not gotten to that one narrative where we can highlight the wealth and cultural assets of our students and why they're important for our industry and the growth of our economy, and yet say to our government, you're underinvesting in your most important asset for our community, for democracy. You gotta be able to say that in 3 minutes, right? And then you ask for money and then you vote.
The narrative is really important, and I think we're ashamed of our narrative in higher education. We want the Ivy narrative instead of the Medea narrative.
Took me 5 years to get rid of that Ivy narrative.
With the narrative, there is no single organization that's going to solve every problem in your community.
Yeah.
But collectively, in partnership, you can. And I think that's the movement, is how do we integrate our resources and our work, where we talk a lot in higher education of silos, but as I've worked to tear down the silos within Amarillo College, but by building a network and connection with all of our social service providers and community organizers in our region, those same silos exist within the social services network. Yeah. And yet none of those social services networks have removing poverty in their mission. And it's going to take the collective partnership, shared resources, and impact to make the movement real, I think.
That's great. That's a great segue. So, just take about 5 or 10 minutes at your table. What's resonating with you? What do you want to hear more about? And come up with some questions. So I want to turn it over to you, and then we'll come back and do a Q&A.
Hi, my name is Hikma Shirka. I use she, her pronouns. I am on the National Council of Young Leaders with Opportunity Youth United. I have a whole bunch of notes and things I want to respond to, so I'll get started. First of all, it's so refreshing to hear the language you all use to talk about the work that you do, and like words like love and care. And I have 2 questions, and I hope that's okay. I'm going to start with my first one. I'm certainly a huge advocate for making sure the students that you're working with, are the drivers of the environment that they're in, right? That they're part of decision making, that they're part of the designing of what the school and the support systems look like. I'm wondering, as we're talking about Opportunity Youth, what, if you have already done this, what has it looked like to engage folks who have been disconnected from your schools, and what, if you haven't done that, what do you think are the opportunities to be able to re-engage those students and like have them talk about what the barriers have been for them and why they got disconnected, and what that path to re-engagement could look like so they can get to that end point? And I don't know if you want me to wait for you all to answer that to ask my second question, but I can also ask.
I think thank you for that question. I think the hardest part about engaging those that have been traumatized by higher education, is building enough relational trust that they'll tell you what you screwed up.
Yeah.
And sometimes, one, it's not inviting them to your campus to tell you what you screwed up. It's making sure that as a president and as a college that you are integrated in community organizations that you all represent, and you're at those tables. That's when you start building relational connections with people that need a new version of higher education but don't trust you enough to embrace it. So you got to go into the community and you got to start apologizing for things that we screwed up. Like, I'm embarrassed to say, when we first started our transformation and was trying to figure out why students weren't coming back, we had a college promise program that would be helpful. And we found, like, we were turning students away because they owed the library $7, or they you know, we had to start apologizing for the oppressive systems that we had honored over our students.
Pam, I was thinking about your question too, Hikmat, in terms of with the pandemic, re-engaging. Any kind of thoughts there about what it took to re-engage? I mean, we were talking about it a little during this break.
Yeah, that apology tour is still going on. You know, I don't think the pandemic actually did anything different than before the pandemic. I think what the pandemic did was it shined a light on an entire social system that has fallen apart. I'm going to use that word. I think the social contract that we have with our people is a lie. Because in order for things to be healthy, you really have only to have a handful of things, right? Housing, transportation, healthcare, good K-12 education, and food security. So and our students, our community college students, were hanging on, just barely hanging on, and then they carved out a little piece, right, for higher education as their luxury good. What COVID did was it shined a light in the middle of the night. And you can hear it. You can hear the entire infrastructure just falling. Because once you lose that job, once you get sick, then your housing goes, your transportation goes, your healthcare goes. And you can hear the collapse. And when we see it is when all of a sudden students don't show up, right? We're in the middle of remote classes. They don't have laptops. They don't have Wi-Fis. This is nothing new. Y'all know this. You've lived it, right? And then all of a sudden, your students are disappearing. I think at the college, when we were looking at that spring session in 2020, we lost probably 20%, if not more. And by and large, the 800 people we called on the phone who we've lost touch with were black and brown young men. And folks are going, why? I'm like, what do you mean why? Because they're going out to work to support their family, that's why. You have never lived this life, so you don't know what you need to do to keep your family alive. So we started doing things like, no, you don't have to turn your camera on because you're likely doing your homework or doing your session somewhere where you don't really want people to see. That shame of poverty thing that Russell referred to. We reflect it in every freaking thing we do, right? So we started saying, okay, you know what? We're gonna allow you to not really like get a grade. You have entire semester to do a pass-fail. You can do an incomplete. We'll get you help in the summer. We'll get you tutoring to get you through. It's okay. We do a lot of it's okay. And we changed grading policies. We changed withdrawal policies. And then the next semester, we forgave debt.
Yeah.
Right? If you really wanted to come back, if you're enrolling, we're going to not worry about what you owe the semester before because we really do want you to come back. But the numbers still hadn't bounced back because we have not really recovered. I know you hear in the news, well, it's only a 3.5% unemployment rate. Well, that's with the white community. You look at the communities of color, they're double that every time, before and after COVID. So don't use COVID as an excuse, right? We haven't fixed it before, we haven't fixed it now. It's just that now, if you see it, then we have a chance of fixing it. So I really don't think that our enrollment is going to bounce back for another semester or two, because you can tell that our communities haven't bounced back. So so that's COVID. That's COVID for me. And it is not about COVID. It's really about what have we done in the last 20 years to shore up our infrastructure for our inner cities and for our gateway cities, neither of which we've taken care of. Until we do that, and in the middle of that is really the racism pieces that we all know about. Yeah. So we hate black and brown people, we hate poor people. What else do we hate? You can name them. Once we start hating, you're not going to get any of that built, right? But as educators, we can't go about it in this way, right? Even while we mediate the hate, to teach people to look deeper, to look more kindly and look more humanely, we have to change the system at the same time. If we only carry the hate and we only carry the anger, we're not going to forward anybody. So, a part of what I've learned over the last 4 or 5 years is that COVID or otherwise, understanding and forgiveness and giving context, and begin, scooping the concrete out of the swimming pools and inviting everybody to the party, that's really the only way to do it.
Pam for president.
Stop, I'm already a president. They don't pay me as much.
Thank you. My second question, I think, contradicts my first question a little bit, but I am also, Pam, like you, I moved to the United States when I was 11, and I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so had to navigate school all on my own, basically, like never, first generation also to ever go to college in my family. And so growing up in a household where no one spoke English, no one ever went to college or even knew what that process would look like, my path to college was not easy, and also just through college wasn't easy, right? And also, like, my sister right now is in college, and listening to her talk about the extra resources that have been provided to her during COVID, and her saying, like, I wish this was something I had first year, and I think I would have been able to navigate so much of, like, the barriers that I had if all of these extra, like you were talking about, being able to do an incomplete after the semester's over, or all of the other extra supports that were provided this year just because we saw the impact of COVID. And I think we've had those impacts in our communities. So do you see a future where those things or those extra supports are offered to other students past this, like, post-COVID time or during COVID? Do you think that's something that we can continue to offer students to be able to make sure that we're on the path to success as well? And then the other thing I was going to add is I went through school, and I'm glad I did, but I think a lot of my learning and my growing happened outside of school for me. A lot of who I am is because of the community spaces that I was in, and one of the things that I struggled with through school is, like, whenever I came across whatever obstacles were in my way, a lot of the focus was on the end point. So, like, what are you going to do to get to this end goal of getting this degree, and not necessarily what are you learning on the path to get to that point. So I'm just wondering if you think there is a future where we focus more on the learning journey and not necessarily on, like, the degree or the certificate that we need to get at the end of a college. And what do you think it would take to be able to get to that, like, cultural shift?
I'm so glad that is such an intelligent and well-crafted question. It almost answers itself. Because I think educators, particularly in the K-12 space and the community college space, is looking at the learning journey starting much earlier, right? So you hear a lot about early college movement. Not the dual enrollment movement, but the early college movement, particularly in urban areas and rural areas that have not a whole lot of college-going culture, is that students begin learning and earning college credits much earlier, in 10th grade, in 11th grade, in 12th grade, so that they are crafting, really, their own future as they go, right? So you get an earlier entry. And the other piece about credentialing, this is heresy, but heresy is good. Hell yes. Because there is really a movement now to look at higher education as being in a place of change, right? A lot of dollars are coming down from the federal government and from the state government on getting people back to work now. That has a catch to it, because you don't want to just get a job for a job to earn dollars and you don't have a growth path, right? So a lot of students now would start with non-credit. Maybe they'll go in for 6 months worth of Cisco training, right? Or other kinds of training, or accounting training, or whatever it is, and it would not carry a credential. But I think community colleges are getting smarter in allowing this non-credentialing piece or career-oriented piece to be an on-ramp. And then it moves over to the credit accumulation side. So you can get a credential somewhere along the line, right? We call it stackable credentials. So maybe you start as an LPN, or you can start with a CNA, or a certified nursing assistant, which is not necessarily a credential piece of work. And you can ladder from that onto an LPN, to an associate degree nurse, to a bachelor's degree nurse. So there's the ability to stack, right? But it allows you for a much easier entry. I don't know where that's going to go, but the whole space, I think, of post-secondary credentialing is going to change. We're going to have to think more than just, associate degrees and bachelor's degrees and certificates.
Yeah, I think the future really de-emphasizes degrees and emphasizes a lifelong learning path that may be coupled with work in some form or fashion, but we're not I don't think that we'll see higher ed structured for a 2 or a 4 year time frame. It'll be structured for a lifetime.
I just wanted to add to that. That's to that excellent question, Hikma. We were just talking about that during the break, which is, I don't think we know what it looks like, but I actually think you all are leading us there.
Yeah.
Because I think young people are telling us, like, don't make me come here 15, full time. Make it part of my life.
Yep.
Make it part of a regular way of being, and that means higher ed has to change, but it's going to take a while. There might be others, other players in this space who aren't, who don't have the same kind of, I would say, emphasis and values around care and I'm making sure they're serving you, but it will happen. Right. And so I think, I think your question is a good one, and we're watching it right now, is that it's going to be about a lifelong journey connected more to, work. And I actually, in my deepest self, I hope that's actually an equity play.
Yeah.
Because this current construct was built, again, in spite of. We are thrive. If we thrive, if we're graduating, it's in spite of. And I think that reimagining it because of, I think, is an opportunity. So I think we got to keep paying attention and listening to you, about what that future looks like. Another question. Yes.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jocelyn Gama, and I'm from Oakland, California, and I'm here representing, Oakland, representing Urban Strategies. Okay. So one question that I have, I think I'm gonna turn it around. I'm also a college student, and I've become, throughout my college career, I've become a huge health advocate, particularly around holistic approaches. And I say that because prior to COVID, I had a great experience, living on campus, but COVID, it affected all of us, in very specific ways. From health to housing crisis, we're having one right now. So my question to you guys, you guys do a lot of work in colleges and stuff. What are you guys doing to center around holistic approaches rather than, because all of us, the students that you guys are serving, we're talking about generational trauma, because the main thing that we all need is healing. COVID-19 was a thing that separated us from human connection. You have to stay 6 feet away, but we're humans. We have to think about our mind, body, and soul. If we're not able to align those and keep those intact, we're not able to, be in spaces like this. And I'm talking about from my people at home. I'm finally one of those people that I'm finally stepping a foot in the door, being able to be in spaces like this. But when I'm talking about my friends, that they don't even have the confidence, and I think that I've been stressing enough the thing about confidence. Like, all it is that we need as youth is the confidence to be able to speak, the confidence to be able to understand that everything that I'm saying, I'm being heard. And just really, because, for example, I was in college, I've been in college, it really affected me where I really got depressed. And every time that you talk around depression, if you talk to a doctor, they want to tell you, have you ever taken antidepressants? But that's already given us even a pathway to start going into, the pharma, give the pharmas even more money, we're talking about health, we're talking about our minds, and I'm so into neuroscience and the way that our mind works, because we have to learn how to use our mind as a tool to help us. Our mind doesn't know from right or wrong, but our mind will take what we're feeding it the most. So that's really what I like to center around. What are you guys doing for college, not even just for college students, for the families of these college students, for the whole community, because it's an ecosystem, I know that just exactly what Hikma said, the main things that I've learned were outside of college. Like right now, all I'm worried about is the deadlines, and that I'm not really learning, and I really love to learn, but I have all of these traumas that are always triggering me that I'm not even able to do the basic things that I'm supposed to do to keep going. So for that exact reason, I've been an advocate around like holistic healing, because we all need that. We're all sitting here facing something, and that's exactly what we need. We need healing. That is exactly why we're here. And everything's so interconnected. We can't talk about the education system without talking about the health system. We can't talk about the health system without talking about the prison industrial system. Everything's all interconnected, because we're not just one identity, we're all identities. And the main thing that we need is healing. I can't stress that enough. So to finalize, that's my question. What are you guys doing to bring this holistic approach? Because we can't just keep on taking pills and no, like that, we're just becoming dependent to this, and we want to be independent. We want to have a pathway to real wealth where we don't always have to become attached to this system. We are building our own systems, so yes, that's my question.
I'm voting for her. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think
we have our new presidential candidate.
That's a great question. Holistic.
I think Bunker Hill and Amarillo College have reinvented ourselves around the concept of holistic supports. I wish I could say that's the norm in higher education. I don't think it is yet, but I think it's moving in that direction where we have to worry as much about what your life is like outside the classroom as we worry about what's happening inside the classroom. And that was fundamentally what Maria taught us at AC, is the biggest barriers for success in the classroom didn't have anything to do with learning. Childcare, healthcare, transportation, food, housing, utility payments, legal support services, because we penalize poverty and other issues more than just about anything else. So for us, we have to build systems around love. It's not enough to love you to success. We've got to build the support systems that we put in place. We've invested a lot of money in mental health counseling, in psychologists that can connect you to healthcare in a different way beyond just counseling, with social workers, with coaches and mentors, and with advisors that care about and can see everything that you're dealing with in your life, not just the academic barriers that are in your way. I think that has got to be the future of higher education.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there is, just in the way that you've asked your question, you've answered her question about what the system will be coming through, right? You've expressed the entire educational system almost as a hub, right? The community colleges are hubs for our community, where folks not just coming from it for education anymore, but all the services that Russell's talked about, and all of the care and the community caring. When we shut down the campuses during COVID, one of the hardest things to restore wasn't the teaching or anything else. It was the gathering, right? It was the gathering of people. So in some ways, if we can restore the idea that we are a community hub and that we can access and we can assemble, right, for our students, all the resources that comes to the hub as the student needs it, right? It's a lot to ask. Nobody asks that of a four-year college. Be a hub for your entire community, solve poverty. Who asked the state universities this?
They're
Who
not.
asked the Ivies this? They only ask it of community colleges because in some ways we are the most organic, right?
And responsive.
Right, we are the most holistic and most organic. We're asked to do ridiculous things like solve for poverty. But in a way, we are doing that.
Well, and I would say to your point, all of those services exist in virtually every community college.
Yeah.
They do. The problem is that we haven't invested in those resources to scale them for impact.
Right.
And the power at AC, when our data started changing, when Maria started excelling in her classes, is when we scaled our holistic supports to serve almost 70% of our students go through our case management system. That's when the magic started happening, is when we scaled those supports.
Yeah. I have time for another, one more question. One more question. I see way back there, plaques, but I can't see.
It's okay, we can't see you. You just look like a pool of light.
Back there.
Hello, my name is Ashley. I'm from New Orleans, representing OIU and sponsored by JFF. My question to you all is, are there any conversations about an entrepreneurial experience in the workforce that you all prepare people for?
Okay, I lost that. Did you hear?
So I think it's a really fascinating question. If I want to make sure that I heard it correctly. You're asking if we built in to our learning an entrepreneurial approach to helping students become entrepreneurs, or yes?
Yes, students.
Okay. So this, not for nothing, but I think the future of higher education has got to pivot to include foundational skills like coding and entrepreneurship. That it can't be a standalone degree that you get. It's got to be an integrated skill that you apply to every other concept that you learn. But we're not there yet, and I don't know if anyone is.
Yeah, I really don't think so, not in the holistic way that you're talking about it. I really believe that entrepreneurship should be part of leadership, because it's not just about building small businesses or large businesses. It's really about the way you steward an institution, right? That you become a good steward and a good servant leader when you use the concepts connected with entrepreneurship to encourage risk, to assess risk, and to evaluate and iterate programs. And to me, that is a huge piece to bring on. Things like apprenticeships, project-based learning, internships, and anything that is work-based takes in that element of entrepreneurship. I see it coming in that way, rather than, as you say, a standalone kind of work. We do a lot of stipending. We do a lot of stipending of faculty and staff in order for them to go out and try it out. And that's really what entrepreneurship is. So yeah, we do try, but you're right, we're not quite there yet.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap us up now here right now. I want to give you each, couple seconds, just some final thoughts. What gives you hope? We talked a lot about what's hard, but we also talked about things that are working. But I want to ask you that, Pam and Russell. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is this coming Thursday. I'm going to have 1,300 students walking across the stage at graduation. It is, higher education is an occasional joy. I'd be lying to you if I say I go to work every day, everything is joyful. It's not. Some days it just suck. And some days you can't get done what you need to get done. But then once in a while, Maria comes to you and says, you changed my life. You changed the life of my daughter. You changed my family. Those are the moments that gives me hope.
Maria gives me hope. I think she's smart and ambitious, and she's going to save us from ourselves. But there are things that we have to put in place for her, and it's the holistic supports that we just talked about. And we've got to reimagine the oppressive systems that she's, I think, that have been inflicted upon her. And it gives me hope that in Amarillo College, at Amarillo, Texas, we can name anti-racism as a part of our strategic plan in the most conservative congressional district in the country. And what gives me hope is that Maria helped us craft that plan. And the last secret shopper group that I had evaluate our anti-racism plan, I've shared with Monique, and it was really powerful because she looked at it and she said, this is great, fine, but all I see is that you're talking about and training about anti-racism. When are you going to do something about it? And we have to move, and she said this, she didn't care what we call her, and I don't think she's saying language isn't important. I think she's saying that language cannot be the basis of our conversation about equity and anti-racism, that we have to reimagine and rebuild systems, and Maria gives me hope because she's helping us do that.
Yep. Policies, procedures, guidelines.
Yeah.
Money.
Change our words, narratives, work differently with outside of our box and an ecosystem. Change how people work. Those are the things I heard. Partner different, you have to be different, you have to talk about it different, you have to actually work differently. So I want to thank Pam and Russell for just being leaders in this space. It's a journey. You know, you asked excellent questions that we were like, this is where it's headed, but these are leaders in the field. It's not everyone. So I just want to thank for the engagement, for the opportunity to speak with you. So thank you. And thanks, everybody.